to have here with us Anne Pizzorusso. By profession, she's a geologist, but she is also an Italian Renaissance scholar. She has published several books on Leonardo da Vinci. This year, 2021, she commemorates Dante by publishing a booklet on Dante and the use of gems that he uses in Canticles, the Paradiso. And I'm glad to have her here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Especially to commemorate the 700th anniversary of the death of Dante.
So this will be our commemoration,
Yes.
honoring Dante and our contribution. As little
Yes.
as it can be, it's at least a contribution. Let me put my eyeglasses on so I look better and I can see better.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's a unique contribution.
Yeah. This is our contribution in commemorating the 700 years from his death. Before beginning with Dante, there's one curiosity that I like to clarify, is that in one of your writings, you said that Leonardo da Vinci discovered the Google map.
Yes, I did.
It seems another extraordinary thing. Maybe you can tell us a little about this. It seems interesting.
Yes, I did. It happened. I was at the Royal Library in Windsor, and I came across these little sketches of, like, on the back of an envelope, and of his houses and everything. And I asked the lady there what that was, and she said it was some sketches he made for the city of Imola, because he was working at it as an engineer for Cesare Borgia, military engineer, and Imola was the headquarters of Cesare Borgia, and Leonardo had to make sure that the city was safe. So what he did is he made this map, and he went around and he configured every church, every vacant piece of land, every house, much like, you see the cars going by that are doing Google Snaps. And then he did this plot plan, and then he made the map of Imola. And so and he did it all to scale. So what I decided is, like, is it possible that it's accurate? So I superimposed a real Google map over that, and it fit exactly.
Really amazing.
Yes, I wrote a book on it. So it's Leonardo, cartographer and the inventor of Google Map, available.
By the way, since we are talking about your books, where can anybody find your books?
On Amazon. They're available on Kindle and in paperback. So everything's available on Amazon worldwide. Now,
this year you published the Gems of Dante's Divine Comedy, which I see an image of the book, the face of the book,
yes,
in the back.
This is the book cover, yes. And we're going to discuss the imagery, because you can see all the gems. It looks like I'm in Paradiso, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in this book cover as well.
Now, tell me, you dedicate this book to John Freccero.
Yes.
He's a known Italian Dantist. But did you meet him personally?
No, I studied with him.
You did study with him.
I studied with him, and actually, this is the seminal work. I did a lot of this research with him, for him. And he was amazed, because he had never had a geologist studying Dante. So my work, and especially he was very wonderful in pointing out words that were really not existent in Italian, that came from India, and I'm going to discuss that. So we worked a lot on the philology of the use of gemological words in the Divine Comedy, and it was very rewarding.
For the benefit of our viewers, who was Dante? Briefly, we don't want to talk too much because it could take the whole week.
Exactly, exactly. Well, he was, of course, a Florentine, and at that time there was much political strife in Florence. There was the part of the Guelphs who supported the Pope, and the Ghibellines who supported the Holy Roman Empire. And Dante was a Guelph, and one day he went down to Rome and had a meeting with the people in the Vatican. And when he came back to Florence, he was exiled. He could not come back into the city under penalty of death. So he,
in fact, he was condemned to be burned at the stake.
in one moment, can you imagine? You take a trip, you leave your family. He had a family. I think he had about 5 children. I think he had 3 boys and 2 girls, his wife. And you come back from your trip and you cannot enter your city. And he loved Florence.
It's political, as you said, it is. The Pope actually wanted the French army to enter Florence, and he objected. And so the Pope called him to Rome so that he could have an audience with him. But while he was waiting, the enemy got in and changed the party. And so he was condemned for corruption.
You don't realize how violent things were. I mean, we have our political strife, but things were very violent in Dante's time.
Sure, they were. Now, the other thing we will encounter in the Paradiso, Beatrice.
Yes.
Now, who was Beatrice?
Well, she was a beautiful little girl. She lived near his home in Florence, and he just saw her, and you know how he just became enamored of her. She
the age of 9, she would.
Yeah, exactly. That puppy love seemed to last a long time with Dante. I don't know how his wife put up with it, but
no. He actually never let the world know that he was in love with this girl, or at least he suffered. The girl created in him such a fear and emotions that he really never spoke with the lady, because probably the lady never existed anyway.
This is true. It's true.
It could be because the word Beatrice is exalted beatitude, or so it has to do with more with the religious and theological philosophy, that perhaps it was what he was looking for, beatitude in the eyes of God. So probably that's what happened. They never existed. But as you say, his wife was Gemma Donati.
Right, Gemma.
And the word comes up with Gemma.
So maybe she was the inspiration for the gems in the Paradiso.
Probably, but he never mentions really anything about her. Beatrice was the guide, one of the guides that guides Dante through Paradiso.
Exactly. Like the truly ideal woman, right?
Now, another very brief statement is Dante basically has a different vision of the universe than we know today. Actually, it was a medieval time, and he believed in some kind of concentric world. Maybe you want to elaborate?
Yes, he had an Earth-centric view of the world, where the Earth was the center, and then it went out in concentric circles. There was the circle of the moon, the circle of Mercury, even the circle of the sun, and that's was a common belief, and that's the way he configured a lot of the imagery in the Divine Comedy.
Of course, Dante begins his trip, which was a vision. He traveled physically and spiritually through hell, purgatory, and then he arrived in Paradiso. And in Paradiso, you say that what struck you most was that the knowledge that he had of gems at the time, and not
Yes.
only that, but also that he could use them so poetically that they remain still gems in the
Literary gems, yes.
literary and poetic world today. So maybe you could tell us some examples of the poems where in the Paradise he actually mentions the gems.
Sure. I'll go along and take some selected passages because there are quite a lot of them. And I just want to give you a taste of his artistry and his knowledge. And we'll start on one in Paradiso in Canto 10, line 70 to 72. Within the court of heaven, whence I return, are many jewels found, so fair and precious they cannot be transported from the realm. So already he sets us up that the Paradiso is a treasure chest and it's full of gems and they're going to stay there. And
And stay there in the sense that they cannot be taken out of where he
right, and
saw them.
they're precious, everything we associate with gems. So he's come upon this treasure chest. Now, I just want to also talk just 1 second about his vast knowledge, because I was overwhelmed with his knowledge of gemology, which I'll go into, but he also knew about geography and also timekeeping devices and map making. So he was like another Leonardo da Vinci. He was great in many areas. But today I'm going to concentrate on the gems.
What was known at that time in the Middle Ages about gems? Because I'm sure it wasn't the same as today.
No, it wasn't, but that's what's so astounding about Dante. Number one, why would he care? I mean, he has the knowledge of a gemologist. I'm thinking, where did he get the time and why would he care? I think he cared because he used the gems as a vehicle, because the Paradiso is the canticle of light. Okay, so if you're going to talk about a bright light, say you go out on a sunny day, what can be the contrast? The only contrast can be shadow or reflection or refraction. So he somehow got it in his mind that he was going to have this place that was full of light, but then he had to distinguish light from light. And he did that with gems. Now,
but it's not only gems. We must say that he did use the light from the sun, from the stars, from the planets also. In fact, we will see one when you read about how Dante traveled so fast to the moon and he entered the moon as if it were through a diamond. But anyway, let's...
Right. So anyway, what the important things here are that he was exiled from Florence and then he ended up in Ravenna. Now, Ravenna was the seat of the in Italy of the Byzantine Empire, and also Venice controlled Ravenna. And so you had all this commerce coming in from the Far East. And so things were coming in like gemstones and spices and silks. And then with the fall of Constantinople, a lot of books and a lot of the antique literature came in. So Dante was in the exact right area to see a lot of these things, including the gems. And normally, if you look at any kind of medieval kind of jewelry, or those beautiful covers of the medieval manuscripts, all of the stones are in cabochon form, and cabochon are just those
Abatron. What does that mean?
those are curvy type stones. They're polished and they're just curvy. They're flat and then they're curved on the top. And he saw coming in from the Far East the first faceted stones. We all know what a faceted stones are, diamonds, or jewelry and stuff. The reason why faceted stones are so wonderful is that they refract and reflect the light, so they sparkle. So he noticed this, and that's what he's using as metaphors in the Divine Comedy. Also at the time, there was a lot going on with literary manuscripts. Albertus Magnus wrote about minerals. Marbode wrote about gems. He was a French bishop, and he wrote because a lot of people were interested in the efficacy of gems, much like today, with the New Age movement and gems. Gems were used for healing purposes, spiritual purposes, to ward off evil spirits. And so people wrote about this. Also,
So it had medicinal value, the stones at the time.
Yeah, they felt like emerald could help you with your eyesight. Amethyst could ward off drunkenness, and so they had a lot of things going on there. So he was familiar with all of this kind of lapidary, these lapidary treatises, which were very popular at the time. Also, a lot of manuscripts were coming out from the universities and the monasteries on geometry, and these were used to help the gem merchants in Venice create the first facets on the stone, because if you don't cut your stone correctly, the light just enters the stone and it's dead. It does not reflect. And so Dante was in contact with a lot of these people. And so what happened is he was at the right place in the right time. And there were a lot of astrological and theological and mythological connotations to the use of gems. And one of the ones that is most important, I think, is the pearl, because it didn't require to be cut, and it was very, very appreciated, especially the large, perfect pearls. So if we look at Paradiso 22, lines 28 to 30.
Before we go to reading,
yes,
you said that basically it was Venice that began to cut the stones in a way that we today, in that system that we still use today, and the gems and the diamonds become translucent, and before, when they were different.
Yes, what happened was, as I said, the gems would come in from the Far East into Venice, and the Italians, being great goldsmiths, would set them, and they were just so beautiful and bought by all of the rich people. And then the Venetians started to cut the gems, and in fact, diamond, which is the hardest element on Earth, nobody could touch them. But eventually the Venetians and then the Dutch were able to cut diamonds, but that wasn't until hundreds of years later. But yes, Venice was the center of gem mounting in gold or silver and gem cutting. So Dante was in the right place.
How did the diamonds look, for example, during the Middle Ages?
They were uncut. So basically, they just, in a lot of paintings, they appear black because they didn't reflect the light. It wasn't until we had faceting that we could truly reflect the light. But of course, there were some uh, more transparent diamonds, but diamonds really weren't as valued because they couldn't be cut and because their true beauty, faceted beauty, could not be realized, at least in Dante's time.
Okay, let's go into the reading.
Okay, so in Paradiso 22, line 28 to 30, and now the largest and most lucent among these pearls came forward, that it might make my desire concerning it content. So here you have this large lustrous pearl, which is the precious spirit of Saint Benedict, comes forward to talk to Dante. And this is a beautiful image because at the time the church was very, very corrupt. And he was in this, he was in sharp contrast to this corruption. And because the pearl surface is round, it just kind of glows. It has this inner light. And so Dante casts Saint Benedict as having a pure soul and an inner light. So it's a beautiful image.
He was the creator of the mysticism, I imagine. So he wanted to show that it
Right,
was
right.
a brilliant. In fact, there was a some kind of a bunch of splendid gems around him.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And his characteristic was he had this translucence, this iridescence, which is very captivating. So let's look at another section in Paradiso, Canto 3, 10 to 15. Such as through polished and transparent glass, or waters crystalline and undisturbed, but not so deep as their bed be lost, come back again the outlines of our faces, so feeble that a pearl on forehead white comes not less speedily into our eyes. So here we have this pearl on a forehead white. And this is what John Ficero talks about as being the play of shadow and light, and this whole shadow and light being emblematic of the poem itself. And I look at it from a gemological standpoint and agree completely, because every oyster does not produce a perfect pearl. You can find little calcareous congregations, they're called, and they're dull, they're worthless. So what makes a pearl worth a lot of money? It's the iridescence, it's the light. And so I think that it's absolutely beautiful that Dante is playing what's valuable, what's worthless. It's all about a little bit of iridescence.
This is a very difficult passage. I read it several times. It is actually difficult to really understand, and that is the shadow and the light that is comparing to something, but to me it's not very clear. Yet it shows the, as you say, the geological importance of that. He's viewing the peril from water which is not too deep, and so you can see the shine of the pearl and not at the same time.
Yeah, it's extremely complex, but when you look at it from, as I said, just comparing the, I'm talking about two elements that have the same chemical composition. They're both calcium carbonate.
Yeah.
One is dull and worth nothing. The same thing, if you grind it up, put them both in a laboratory, they're equal. What makes one priceless? And I thought that was so beautiful that Dante would use that image, that the light and the iridescence make the difference. So now let's just look at sapphire, because this is so exciting. This is in Paradiso 15, 22 to 24. Nor was the gem dissevered from its ribbon, but down the radiant fillet ran along. So the fire seemed it behind alabaster. So what he is describing here is a star sapphire. We've all seen star sapphires. They're a blue sapphire, but in the middle they have a white star that actually shines and it moves, and this is caused by needles of minerals, normally a mineral called rutile, in the gem itself that makes it actually move. And it's been known as the Star of Destiny. It's and it has 6 sides, and what happened was it's called asterism. The star is called asterism. And I just thought it's amazing that he saw this and then he puts it into the poem and he talks about the movement of a gem that actually exists. He also uses the blue to talk about the Blessed Virgin, which is the first time that the blue was associated with the Blessed Virgin by Dante. The other thing he does here is he uses neologisms. This is when you have a noun and you turn it into a verb. So he would use some things like gems, gem, to bejewel, sapphire, zaffirato, so he uses these techniques, changing nouns into verbs. And just think about it. He's using the vulgar Italian, and all of a sudden he's using these grammatical acrobatics in this poem.
When you say vulgar Italian, well, maybe you need to explain a little, because vulgar today doesn't mean the same as the word you used.
Oh, il volgare. I'm sorry. It's
Vulgare meaning the regular language, the common
yes,
language spoken by the people.
yeah,
It does not mean vulgar.
right, right. It was but very kind of new. He wanted to appeal to everybody rather than writing in Latin.
Uh-huh.
So let's.
By the way, he was one of the first to write in it. Well, it was San Francisco who also wrote in Italian dialect, but he is the one who established it. That's why today we call him the father of the Italian language.
Exactly.
He chose willfully to use Italian rather than Latin. And in fact, Petrarch, who came later, continued to think that Latin was going to be the academic language and the world language. So he was wrong, and Dante was right.
So let's go on to now the ruby, because this is my favorite part, because the translations are very interesting. This is Paradiso 9. Other joy already known to me became a thing transplendent in my sight, as a fine ruby smitten by the sun. And he calls this qual fin balasso in che lo sol percuota. Balasso is an Indian word for a violet, a red ruby, and Dante put that right into the Divine Comedy. So he was very current on the even the gemological names, making these very fine distinctions for all sorts of gems.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we basically reached exactly the time, and I would like to thank you very much. And we dedicate this to Dante on 700th year of his death. He's still very famous, and he will continue to be. And thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.